with all of the experiences that you've had in the Marine Corps, all the courses that you've gone to, obviously OCS and all of that, what do you really attribute your success in the business world to as it relates to that experience?
Yeah, I mean, other than luck, and just being in the right place at the right time, I think a few things stand out. One, we talked in the Marine Corps about bias for action and taking advantage of opportunities that are presented,
Yep.
to do things. And so I think that's one. Just taking advantage of opportunities and showing initiative and having initiative to try different things. I think a tolerance for risk
Yep.
is another important one.
Yep.
Decision making, communication, all of those things. And then I think just, general, leadership principles. I mean, really having been some of the best leadership courses and training and having some of the best leadership experiences, I've benefited from serving under some really great, humble, exceptional, commanding officers and officers in charge and things like that, who I've been able to learn from and emulate. So that's been one of the things. You know, having a career where people are intentionally building into you, intentionally correcting you, intentionally
Mm-hmm.
evaluating you, having that constant, now 20 plus years of feedback on, hey, here's things you're doing well, here's things you're not doing well, here's things you need to get better at. I think that's invaluable.
Yep.
Uh,
Which I agree
I
with
think
that
decision
completely.
making.
Yeah, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
that's one thing that really stands out to me from my military experience. In fact, I remember to this day, and we're talking 20 years ago now. Like after I got done with the School of Infantry, I had one sergeant tell me, he's like, Nate or Wheeler, you know, I think you could be a really good leader. You're smart. You know what you're doing. You do a great job with everything, but you don't take initiative to take those leadership positions, which that was kind of my mind. I was kind of like, I don't, you learn in the military, don't volunteer for anything, right? All you're going to do is get shit on if you get in that squad leader position or whatever. But no, those little evaluation moments stand out to you, and you remember them for a lifetime, and they really feed into building you up as you grow. So I think that's a really
Yeah.
important one.
Yeah, I would share a similar story. When I was a young platoon commander, and I can't say that I was exceptional. I did an all right job probably. But I had a first sergeant have a very difficult conversation with me that, I wish I could contact him now and thank him for it. But, it was very similar. Like, hey, you're not, you're not doing what you need to be doing. Right. And so having people that are courageous enough and have a position to be able to tell you that and give you that feedback, has positively affected my career since then.
Right.
But I think a few other things that stand out. One, decision making. I think, that's a thing. And you mentioned the book Left a Bang that I co-wrote, and a large part was about making decisions. It's a human universal. We have to make thousands and thousands of decisions each day.
Right.
Rarely are we taught a method of making decisions, right?
Right.
From kindergarten all the way through graduate school, I never had one class or formal piece of, education, except for in the Marine Corps, about making decisions under pressure, making decisions without all the information you need. And those are the kind of decisions we have to make on a daily basis. You never have all the information that you need, whether it's a business decision or a decision about your family or life. Um, and so just being able to kind of quickly take a look at something, dress it down to the most key important aspects, and then being, willing to make a decision even in spite of the risk involved in making that decision,
Right.
I think has been helpful. So I think there's so many. I mean, I can go on for, we could have a whole podcast just about what the Marine Corps has taught me
Yeah.
and helped me to do in life. I mean, really, I owe a huge, debt of gratitude to my service in the Marine Corps and the people that I've served with and people that I've learned from.
Right. Yeah, and honestly, I like what you said about, making the decision without all the available information. and also understanding that there's risk involved in making the wrong decision, but making it anyways. But that kind of goes back to that bias for action. And I almost have that spidey sense too, where it's like, I don't really want to make a decision right now, but I fear the consequences of not making a decision. And I think
Right.
that's a
Yeah.
really important leadership characteristic, in that if you just sit back and let things happen, it's probably not going to go your way. You're better off making a mediocre decision right now than a perfect
Yep.
decision later.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you highlighted it. Not making a decision is a decision,
Right.
right? It's just a decision that you can, there's a little bit of you know, not doing something allows you to blame the situation,
Right.
right? Well, yeah, I didn't make a decision, but the situation is what, ultimately caused this catastrophic consequence or whatever. There's some plausible deniability if you don't do something, right? I
Right.
mean, I think we see this in bureaucracies and administrations and things all the time where, a hard decision has to be made. They'd rather do nothing than something, because
Mm-hmm.
if they do something, then they're to blame. But if they do
Right.
nothing, well, they can just blame the situation. But I think, early on, as you experienced, we do these in the Marine Corps, these tactical decision games. And I remember, the key phrase is what now, Lieutenant? You're faced with a situation. What are you going to do? And it's not, there's no option of not doing something.
Right.
You need to make a decision. And I remember this one very specific tactical decision game at the basic school or infantry officer course where, they deliberately allow you to leave the room whenever you want to. At the end of the however long, 15, 30 minutes or whatever, of the game, you have to come back with a presented solution. And they over time slowly give you more and more information. And some people stay all the way to the very end because they think that there's going to be some piece of information that's going to be the key to solving the problem, right?
Right. Right.
And that's never the case. Some people leave the room right away. They see the picture, they intuitively think they have an answer. Some people stay a little longer. Um, but you have to choose at some
Mm-hmm.
point when you're going to leave the room and then write down your solution.
Right.
And there's no right answer. That's the thing. There's no right answer. It's okay. At what point do you believe you have enough information to go and make a coherent decision? And
Right.
there's this, like you've just said, there's this risk. There's a scale of risk, right? Balancing, how much information you have with how much risk there is in potentially being wrong. But at some point, you just got to get comfortable with being okay making a wrong decision.
Right. So
Um,
with that,
you
when they
know,
evaluated it, what did they say to you? Was it the people who left immediately and had a gut feeling about it were the kind of winners of that, or were people that just waited a little bit longer? Like, what? How did that work out?
yeah, so I would boil it down into kind of a couple principles. One we've already discussed. You're never going to have all the information you need.
Right.
Two, there's rarely ever going to be the one single piece of information that's like going to untie the Gordian knot, right? That's going to be that key of this is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people, want to believe that's why they stay the whole time, right? They believe that there's going to be one piece of information that they're given that's going to tell them what the best solution is.
Right.
Um, so it's really about making a decision. It's really about making a responsible decision based on the information you have. But then more than that, the situation is always going to change, right? We have this another phrase in the Marine Corps, right? The enemy gets a vote. In business, the economy gets a vote. Your competitors get a vote. So it's not about necessarily what did you make the best decision. It's did you make a decision and then adapt when the situation changes.
Right.
So I think that's what that tactical decision game really is about. Is like, hey, you need time to plan, you need time to prepare, you need time to put your decision into words, right? We would call that an operations order or tactical order or something like that. You need time to communicate your plan to your team. They need time to plan and prepare, communicate to their Marines what's going to happen. So you have to take into consideration that, like, if you take all the time to plan and your team doesn't have time to do what they need to do, well, you might have the best decision, but you're not going to execute it very well.
Right.
Additionally, yeah, once you hit the ground, the situation may be totally different than what you thought, right? The information you have might not be the most available information, might not be the best information.
Right.
So you have to be able to adapt and adjust and make different decisions after that. So it's really a starting point. I mean, there's all these great phrases and sayings, right? Like, failing to plan is planning to fail, or like you just, you said a few yourself. So it's really just about, you know, can you make a decision with a certain amount of information and be comfortable with the risk and be able to adapt when the
Yep.
situation ultimately changes.
Right. Yep.
And in business, right? I mean, you can have a strategy. Right now, today, we were working on our 2026 strategic initiatives. I think that's the direction we need to go, based on things that we're doing now, based on recent projects and opportunities that we have, based on where I think the market's going, based on where I think the technological needs are, and where our technology could have an impact.
Mm-hmm.
2026 may roll around, and the situation changes fundamentally. A new technology develops, a new need is discovered, a new opportunity arises that
Yep.
that tells us, hey, we should go in this direction and not the strategic plan that we had. Now, some companies might establish a strategic direction, and regardless of what happens, they're not moving, they're not budging. That might be the right call, and so that's where leadership comes into play.